episode number 83, Challenge Roth with Emily Koch. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. You will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the pursuit of the perfect race. Today I have the pleasure of talking with my friend Emily Koch about her recent race experience at Challenge Roth in Germany, where she had a time of 12 hours, 39 minutes, 55 seconds. This race took place on July 1st, 2018, where the temperature was 50 and rose to 73 with a wetsuit legal swim. She has been doing triathlons for 8 years now. Welcome to the show, Emily. I look forward to hearing about your race experience in Germany.
Sounds good. Let's kick it off.
Awesome. So what made you want to do this race?
So this is the second time I've done this race. I had the opportunity to do the race 3 years ago. And I've been interested in going back and finally got up early enough to get my name into the list. It sells out in about 50 seconds every year. So just really wanted to go back. Racing abroad is an amazing experience. It's an amazing race. So that was the driver for this year.
Wow. Now, how is your training going into this race?
Great question. I work with a coach and we had a pretty well thought out race, schedule this year that kind of built to the full. I did have some challenges with balancing work. And so we made a boatload of adjustments kind of in the last build block. I was on travel, for work for, about 2.5 weeks. So generally the way my season is laid out, I'll start with some small races. I did focus on Quasi this year. And it was the 10th anniversary of the Rev 3 race, in Connecticut. So that was really fun. I did the Olympic, and then spent a lot of time building volume for a full. It's the first one I've done in 3 years. So
wow.
Lots of volume.
If we take a look at your training going into this race, say the last 12 to 15 weeks, did you miss any training?
Excuse me?
Did you miss any training?
Oh, of course. So, my work schedule is, it's fairly dynamic. I do have like kind of a normal office job. Although, our schedule is dependent on, when customers want to talk to us, I do software development. And so we had a couple of really big activities, leading up, to the race. So there were a fair number of things that I missed. When I look at my schedule over the week, I try really hard to pick the focus sessions and make sure those are happening. But there were definitely sessions that either got shortened, or kind of rearranged, or there were a few that I just weren't able to get to. So yeah, I missed a few.
Okay. Now, if we take a look at your training in general, did you get injured in training?
No, that is one thing I kind of pushed straight through. I have had some trouble with bringing my run volume up before, but I've been working with my coach now for about 5 years, 6 years almost. And so we have a pretty good approach to keeping me healthy as that comes up.
Okay, who's your coach?
A guy named Jack Brackenier. He coaches out of Cadence Cycling in Philadelphia.
Okay. So is this a virtual coach?
No, I have the ability to work with him in person.
Wow.
So I live about 40 minutes away from Philadelphia.
Okay. Now, as far as your training going into this race, what was your longest swim, bike, and runs?
My swim volume is not that big. I probably did a couple of 4K swims, but that isn't an area where I bring my volume up. I kind of sit steady on my swim volume. As far as my longest bike ride, it was great. I did it in a hotel in Boston. It was 6.5 hours on a trainer looking at a hotel wall. And that was again because of, work commitments. And then my longest run, usually tops out at around 2:45 to 3 hours.
Wow. So you're not really worried about the distance on the run. You're worried about the time.
Right. I do time-based run. I'll often have distance goals in there, but it's, again, because we worked to find a way that I wasn't getting injured. I do my running on a variety of surfaces. So I might go out and do a run on the trails, or I might spend some time on a treadmill, or I might go out. So all of those impact my speed. So we've settled on time over distance for my long work.
Okay. Now, what run sessions did you do that gave you the confidence to go into this race where you know that you were going to hit your race pace?
Again, it was kind of a lot of build up to the race. The last couple weeks of my long run is normally where I would get the confidence for that. And I had to move some of those around. So mostly my confidence going into the race from a run perspective was that I've done the distance before, and that, my body can handle the work versus going in, say, if I were running a straight marathon, I'd be much more focused on what can I get done in 2 hours and 45 minutes. This coming in, my goals for the race, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but my goals for the race were to go out, run strong, and remember the finish, because Roth has a pretty iconic finish line.
Right.
So, going in, I knew I could do the distance. And on race day, I didn't quite have the run that I was hoping for. But the confidence was there that I'd be able to finish.
Okay. Now, go ahead and tell me about this trainer ride that you did in the hotel room, because that sounds gnarly. You spent 6.5 hours on the trainer.
Yes.
Now, was this an exact 6 hours and 30 minutes?
It was probably 6 hours and 6.5-ish. I probably got to the half-ish. So I prefer to ride outside. I actually, my passion is riding my bike. All of the rest of it is like associated elements of the sport, right? But I had been in Boston before, and I knew that there's infrastructure and there's long run places you can do long runs, and there's places you can do long rides, but I really wanted to nail the ride. So I've done this before. The year I did Ironman Atlantic City, where I was spectating, I think, in Atlantic City for some friends, and I did a very long trainer ride because the weather was absolutely awful. This time the weather was fine. I wanted to make sure that I was hitting my numbers. So I brought my trainer with me. I moved into the hotel, and they thought it was a little odd, but I spent time, riding in the hotel room. Had some good music. Your nutrition's right next to you, so it works out.
Okay. Now, were you trying to hit a certain power number? Did you have like intervals in there, or was it just one straight long interval?
No, there were 2 90-minute blocks in there at Race Power.
What was your race power number based off of your FTP? Was that a certain percentage that you wanted to hit?
Yeah, it is percentage based, but I focus more on kind of sitting around the 155, 160 number versus the percentage, but it's obviously worked back from my FTP.
Okay. What percentage of your FTP was that?
So my FTP is 213. I can't do the math in my head.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, if we take a look at your training, did you do a lot of bricks in your training?
I don't do long bricks, so I will do a run off the bike once a week. It's usually about 15 minutes, but I don't do a lot of the 3-hour ride, 1.5 hour runs. It's always very short, just usually less than 2 miles to keep my legs moving.
Okay. Now, were you doing a lot of strength training?
So I do a fair bit of strength training. For anyone who doesn't know, Erin Carson, who's based out of Boulder, has a fantastic app that you can go out and get. It's available on all of the normal app things. Anyway, Erin and I have had an opportunity to work together in person before. And so I've supplemented with a bunch of the stuff that she has out there. So it's a great resource.
Now, as far as your nutrition plan during activities, during training, what were you using?
So I use a combination of power bar stuff. And then as I got closer to race day, my supply of power bar that was in my basement was dwindling. So I switched over to shot blocks.
Okay. If we take a look at your training altogether, what was the most hours of training you spent in 1 week?
I get up into the low 20s in my biggest weeks. So 18 to kind of 21 is where I'll top out, 21, 22.
Okay. Mentally, were there any days where you just didn't want to train? I mean, that's a lot of training.
Of course, there's always the days that it's a challenge to get out of bed and attack your training. So that's one of the things that, we focus a lot on with me in particular, myself and my coach. We focus on staying positive, finding things you love. I talked about kind of doing my runs on varied surfaces. That's one of the things that helps me if I can get out in the woods and do a trail run. That's fantastic. The other trick that I've kind of learned for myself is that if I wait till the afternoon to do a session, it's not going to go very well. I'm going to get out of work. It might be 7 o'clock. I'll be super tired. I won't want to do it. And there'll be some reason that I can't get started. So for me, getting up in the morning, getting out the door and getting some of that work done is the way that works. And that's the way to kind of keep the mental demons at bay as the volume got bigger.
Okay. Now, with your training, how much of your training was outside versus inside? I know you live up north, and there was a big winter storm that came in and kind of kept everybody up in the northern part of the states inside a lot more this year. How much was your training outside versus inside?
So I tried to do as much outside as possible. I ride a fair bit outside. I did do some of those big builds in a hotel room. That's unusual for me. If I was home, I would have done that outside. From a running perspective, I do all of my long runs outside. I have done 2-hour runs on the treadmill. They're awful. I do my speed work on the treadmill, but I would say I'm probably 75 to 80% outdoors for ride and run.
Okay. Now, do you use a road ID when you're outside?
Yes, absolutely. Never leave without it.
Great. Great to hear that. Now, if we take a look at your training again, what workouts did you do that gave you the confidence to go into this race prepared?
That's a great question. I think, it's really, for me, it's more an accumulation of work versus one workout. It definitely was awesome to check off that last long ride, having done it in the hotel and just really focusing on things. But again, it's hard to train for a 12-hour day, a 13-hour day. So it's more knowing that I've put the work in. I think that's one of the things that's come with racing more for me is I used to put a lot of stock in 1 or 2 workouts to drive me. I know my body can do it now. I may not always like it, but I know my body can do it now. And so it's more getting through a build set or a couple of build weeks versus 1 or 2 workouts that, makes me feel like I'm ready to go.
Okay. So you're more putting your confidence into the consistency of you doing the work over time versus 1 or 2 key workouts.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. And you're not the first one to say that. And I almost wish more people would do that because you can have the same long workout 3 and 4 times in a row. And one time it's going to be great. The next time it's going to be crap. And then the next time it could be even better than the first time. But it all depends on what your body's going to bring that day. And sometimes your mind can bring something that your body can't and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
So now then, when you're not training or racing or traveling, what are you doing?
Working.
What do you do for work?
My schedule honestly is pretty tight. In the winter, I spend a lot of time skiing. And usually if I'm not in the office or training, I'm outside doing something fun. We really enjoy hiking. I spend a lot of time up in the mountains. And in fact, I just came back from a crazy adventure with one of my best friends. Doing Vermont's toughest. So that was pretty amazing. So that's, I'm skiing, I'm cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, playing outside basically.
Okay. Now, being that you have a full-time job, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're training 20-ish hours a week, and then you're working 40 hours a week. So that's 60 hours of block plus your normal, at least maybe 70 hours of sleep. How do you balance the rest of your life with training?
We have a giant calendar that tells us who's doing what day. I'm very fortunate. My husband trains and races as well. And we don't have any kiddos. We have we have a dog and a cat who are they're involved in kind of the household, schedule as well. But for the most part, we work around kind of schedules, and we have pretty tight timelines, and everything seems to fit except for dinner usually happens at 9 o'clock at night.
Wow.
That's the one concession that we make.
Okay. Now, being that your spouse understands the sport and understands your commitment level to it and wants you to do the best in the sport, how much different would this experience be for you if he didn't understand and didn't support you in this journey?
Yeah, I think triathlon is hard because it's at both times it's a very selfish endeavor, especially at the full distance level, the amount of time that you're spending, away from home. But it's also, you need the support. So I think it'd be very hard to manage, especially at the iron distance or at a high level, any of the other distances, without that support, because we help each other out with laundry, and we make sure that, if somebody has a long session, that the other person is able to, take care of the dog and all of that stuff. I think it'd be very, very difficult to do if it was without the support of your family.
That makes sense. Now, being that we're kind of getting done with the training portion, what did your taper look like going into this race?
So it was a little bit work adjusted, and it was also travel adjusted. Generally, I'll give you the kind of big picture, and then we'll talk about what changed. Generally, I finish up my last big block about 2 weeks before we start to travel, and then my taper is a lot of short sessions. I still keep a fair amount of intensity, so I'm still doing short, hard runs to keep my legs moving. But usually I'm on a pretty big shutdown that kind of last 2 weeks from any significant volume. This trip was a little bit different because I had to move my last long run, wound up within kind of the 9 days before the race. And that one was actually a challenge. My body was pushing back pretty hard on that one. And then we actually got on a plane and flew to Germany. So the last couple of days before the race were more focused on travel and getting there and getting relaxed than I would be on a normal race.
Okay, now you said your body was pretty much pushing back there. What do you mean?
So normally I do a big ride on Saturday, and then I do my big run on Sunday, and my body's pretty used to that. So I did that big trainer ride on Saturday, and on Sunday I got called into the office, so I wasn't able to do my long run. I think I did it, if I remember right, Thursday the next week, so it was quite a big break. I was on travel. I had picked a place I wanted to run. It was very hot out. And I struggled on that run. I wasn't able to hold pace. My legs were hurting. It was just a warm day, and it didn't kind of wind up the way I wanted it to work out. Nothing bad. I wasn't injured. It was just, I think my body was telling me, hey, let's shut this down. So I wound up cutting that run short. That was about it.
Okay.
Listen to your body.
Now, you cut your biggest run of the training block short. Is that right?
Yep.
Did that impact your confidence going into the race?
No, it didn't. Because again, like I kind of take stock of the 4 weeks before that. The 4 weeks before that, I had a couple of really great runs. I've been in this spot before. Running is probably the discipline that I've had to work the most on mentally. And so I had a quick call with Jack, and we said, you know what, we're going to move on. This is fine. It's just one run. Not a big deal.
Okay. Now, when did you start your traveling to the race?
I flew home from Boston on Tuesday night. And Wednesday afternoon, we were in the airport in Philadelphia, getting on a plane to Frankfurt.
Okay.
So I flew Wednesday overnight. We landed Thursday morning, and the race was on Sunday.
Okay. Now, being that this is an international flight, who did you fly with?
Lufthansa.
Okay. Good experience with them with your bike?
Yeah, we've had no problems. Again, I've done this race. This is the second time I've done the race. We flew with them before, no problems. I use a Rooster hen house, so it's the 2-piece luggage. No problems with customs, no problems with baggage, no problems. It was easy peasy.
Okay, and that's a hard case, right?
It's a soft case with the armored hen house has a sheet of plastic that sits on the inside of it. So it's not a full hard case, and it's a little bit more rugged than the complete soft case.
Gotcha. Now, whenever you flew over there, did you bring your own CO2s?
No, but I wound up bringing them home on mistake.
Oh, okay.
So, yep. Apparently it's not a problem. I picked up CO2s at the expo when I was there.
Okay. Now, do you remember about how much your flights cost to get over there?
I don't. It wasn't, we booked, and this is kind of a tip for anyone who's going to do like long distance races. We wound up booking through Expedia. And so we got a package. We did flights, and hotels together. And you can do a rental car with them as well. So, we kind of had a total package. And we wound up staying in Nuremberg, so about 30 minutes outside of Roth. There's a couple reasons for that, but it made getting the flight and the hotel very, very easy.
Okay. What were the couple of reasons of staying there?
So Nuremberg is a beautiful city. They have an imperial portion of the city, as well as kind of the modern financial area. It's the home of Nuremberger Insurance. But the imperial city is a walled city. And it's a great place to go people watch. And there's, old churches and there's museums. And so we had stayed 3 years ago in Nuremberg as well, but we had stayed a train ride away from the imperial city. This time we wanted to stay so we could walk right from our hotel over there and in the evenings and in the afternoons and our free days. So
okay,
that's why we chose to stay in Nuremberg.
Okay, now then we're going to just skip forward a few days, being that there were some days in between the time that you got to the city and the time that the race venue check-in started. So how was the check-in process at this race in comparison to Rev 3 races or Ironman branded races?
So we actually don't need to skip that many days. The Roth has an entire festival.
Oh, wow.
So they actually opened the festival on Thursday. So we landed on Thursday morning. We checked into the hotel, took a little bit of a nap, and actually drove right to the race site on Thursday and did all of my check-in.
Okay.
So it's very well organized. It's a very, very large race. And we showed up on Thursday. We're able to do packet pickup. You get your bags. You get a swim bag, a bike bag, and a run bag. And the swim bag's really your morning clothes bag. You get your swag. You get your wristbands, all of that. They actually have a beer garden. So we would have liked to have a beer, but it was raining. So we headed back on Thursday. And that's open. The festival site is open all weekend. It's open all day Friday. It's open all day Saturday. And they have a women's event. They have some kids events as well. So it's a big party. As far as registration, we were there really early this year, so there was really no lines. Extremely well organized. And like I said, it's a large race, so it's a different process than a smaller race, even something like Quasi. There is the one difference is when you check in your bike, and we checked in my bike on Saturday, you have to leave your helmet with it. So it's important to know that they do things a little bit different, because we did see some people who had to go back and grab a helmet to check their bike in on Saturday.
Okay. Now then, you got a rental car, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. How big of an issue was it getting a rental car in another country?
As long as you can drive a stick, it's very, very easy. And it's easy if you don't drive manual as well. It's just more expensive. So we had a tiny car. Since I don't have a hard bike box, and it's a 2-piece, you can get any size car you want. We got a tiny little 3-cylinder car, but it costs about $200 US for like the 10 days. So very affordable. Germany itself is very easy to navigate. The driving is fine. It's kind of normal side of the road for us. So I'm not sure that I'd be as adventurous, if there was, a difference in that kind of manner, but it's very easy.
Okay. Now, how does the car insurance work? Do you need to have your car insurance proof there with you? What do you need to have?
So we went through like if you were to go to a normal Avis or Enterprise, it's kind of the same deal. So most people's bikes are covered under their homeowner's insurance. You should definitely check that before you leave. And then it's just like walking at any airport in the U.S. You walk up to the rental counter, you give them your driver's license. They do need a U.S. driver's license. And you can add additional insurance, I'm sure, but we did not.
Okay. And then, so you get to the race venue, you get your bike checked in. Are you eating anything certain the day before the race to prepare you for the race?
I focused maybe a little bit more on bringing in some carbs, the 2 days before the race. I don't do a full carb load. Bavarian food is a lot of potatoes and meat, and not a ton of veggies. But so, it was pretty easy to find some, spätzle or noodles or kind of something in that manner. The big thing for me, nutrition wise, before a race is staying hydrated. So staying hydrated and trying to stay out of the sun as much as possible.
Okay. How was the water quality over there? Were you able to drink the tap water?
Oh, yeah. Definitely tap water is fine.
Okay. Now, as far as your own course nutrition, did you bring that with you?
Yes. I brought a giant bag of, blocks and goos, and I use base in my bottles. So I had some electrolytes with me. I brought that all over.
Okay. So what was the last workout that you did before your race?
We did a little shakeout run. Went out with my husband, and we were staying across from a great little park. Grabbed some running shoes and just did a little shakeout run. I also, after I built my bike, I did a quick ride, but I didn't really, that was not significant. It was more just to check that everything was working well.
All the gears work and everything.
Yep.
What kind of bike are you using?
So I have a Villiers. No one's heard of it before. And it's the model is a Blade. It's a great bike. Absolutely love my bike.
Where'd you get it at?
Cadence Cycling in Philadelphia.
Okay. And is it pretty easy to work on and build?
Yes, it's fairly easy to work on. It does have aero rear brakes, which can be a challenge sometimes when you're swapping out wheels. But when we did the last kind of work on my bike, we put barrel adjusters, which is not a normal thing on a tri-bike, right? But we have barrel adjusters on both of my brakes, and it's made a world of difference.
Okay. Now, as far as going to bed the night before the race and laying everything out, how was that process for you?
So you drop off on Saturday when we did bike and helmet drop off. We dropped off one of our bags, and so that was ready to go. We had to do a drop off of our second bag in the morning. But again, this is kind of one of those things. I've raced so much now. I don't want to say that it's perfect and I'm not stressed out, but putting together bags is pretty easy. The harder part for me the day before a race is sleeping.
Right. What time were you trying to get in bed the night before the race?
We were targeting around 9 p.m. It was a pretty early push. We were looking at a 3:30, 4 o'clock wake up. A kind of a tip for folks who are traveling internationally is not all hotels have air conditioning. So if staying cool is something that's important to you, just make sure that your hotel has AC the night before, because that can be kind of, that can impact your sleep. I think we wound up getting settled a little later than we expected to, but I was in a good mood and was able to kind of wind down pretty quickly.
Okay. So you wake up on race day. What time do you wake up?
So let's see, transitioned opened at 5. We were targeting getting there at 5:30. So we were going to leave Nuremberg right around 5 o'clock. I started with my alarms at 3:30. I probably actually got out of bed at 4:15. Threw on race kit. They use, numbers. So I put on my race numbers in the hotel. And we didn't have very much to bring to the race because a lot of my stuff was already there. So it was a fairly easy morning for me.
Okay. Now, what are you getting in as far as calories before you leave the hotel?
So normally, I have a very large muffin in the morning. We kind of forgot about morning breakfast until later in the afternoon the day before. So there was a Dunkin' Donuts, so I picked up a muffin from Dunkin' Donuts and kind of had that in the morning on the way to the car.
Wow. Did you hit much traffic on the way to the race venue?
Not until we got very close to the swim start. So we just it's highways between Nuremberg and where the races starts. As we got closer, we definitely got into some parking traffic. I hopped out of the car. My husband went off and parked the car, and I walked down to the swim start and T1 and got my bike ready to go.
Okay. Now, before you hopped out of the car, did that give you any anxiety?
I maybe wasn't the nicest person when I got out of the car.
Okay.
I was a little bit, it all works out, right? And I think one of the things is, as I've raced more, like things happen. That doesn't mean I wasn't stressed when I jumped out of the car. I didn't know how long it was. It was just unplanned.
Right. And you're also, in your mind, probably putting more steps on your feet than you want to.
Yes. Although I knew we were going to wind up parking fairly far anyway, so it probably worked out to be about the same amount of distance. Once we actually, if we had actually gotten all the way to the field to park.
Okay. Now you get to transition. What are you doing in transition? Is this a clean transition race versus an open transition race?
It is clean transition. So it's pretty amazing. People should go look at photos. I'm sure they have some posted on social media of what the T1 looks like. It's clean transition. So all that's in there is your bike and your helmet. Everything else is in a bag. You drop off your T1 bag in the morning and it gets lined up. So all you have to do race day morning is put bottles on. So I bring my bottles. I don't leave them out there the day before. I did have some of my nutrition packed. So I double checked that. And then all you have to do is pump your tires and you're ready to go.
Okay. And you mentioned that you had some issues with your tires.
Yeah, I did. So I went over to the pump and I run a disc cover. I don't have a full disc. And sometimes it's a little bit challenging to get the pump head in and out of the cutout. So I went over and I pumped my tires and I actually broke the valve stem off the top of my tire, pulling the pump head out. The mechanics were absolutely wonderful. I sheared off the valve pin itself. And
which
the little
means that it just went psh.
No, actually, so that's the interesting thing. So that pin and the little nut that are there, right? That's the pressure release, but only if you push on it. So it turns out if you shear off that pin, there's nothing that can push down on that pin and release the tires. So I waited in line. I talked to the mechanics. They assured me everything was fine and I didn't need to change my tube. And so, since I had gotten right to where I wanted from a PSI perspective, we just let it run.
Okay. And
so again, crazy things happen in the morning. Just being prepared for that and kind of rolling with the punches was my lesson learned from this race.
How was your anxiety though during this time in transition with this?
It went up a little bit, I'll be honest with you, mostly because transition was closing at 6:15. And we had to get our bags dropped off, so that they could line them up. Cause you come out of the canal, out of the swim start and you run up the row and just grab your bag. And there's volunteers to help you, but they go in numerical order. So, I was trying to get back over, and get my bag dropped off, and it was probably about 6:10, by the time I got back into transition. But again, my wave didn't go off until 7:05. So I took a deep breath, got my bag dropped off and it was totally fine.
Okay. Now, in between the time that you leave transition and the time that your wave starts, what are you doing?
Putting on a wetsuit takes up a fair amount of time. I always hit the porta potties for the last time. I was able to see my husband. We had kind of picked a meet point the day before and said, if anything happens, I'll see you kind of at this tree. So I went over, and saw him, got a hug. And then, Roth is just such an amazing event, and getting the opportunity to see all of the other waves start is pretty cool. They have a cannon shot for every single group that goes off. So I just kind of stood by in the holding area and kind of watched people tackle the swim.
Wow.
There's so much spectator support. So like the energy from 5 a.m. all the way through, final finisher is just super high. So it's hard to stay stressed.
Wow, that's great. Now, I think it's very important of what you just said about having a meeting point, because you're probably not going to have a phone on you at this point.
Correct.
And having a meeting point the day before when you're together saying, hey, look, if something happens and we're not together, go over here to this point, wherever that might be, a tree, a garbage can, whatever, and have that already pre-planned. Yep. I think that's very key.
It's important for the beginning of the race, and it's super, super important for the end of the race, especially these big races where there's tons of people. Having that point where you can get back together is it's definitely one of the lessons learned we have, not just with, my husband and myself, but when we have friends racing, we always kind of find a spot that we're going to meet.
Gotcha. So you're getting your wetsuit on and you're getting ready for the swim. Do you have a certain way that you like to do your hair and swim cap?
Yep. I throw my hair in a really sloppy bun. It's the same bun that I use all the time. And then I only wear a single swim cap. I put my goggle strap over my swim cap. I don't really do anything special with that. So, I will say, liberal use of tri-slide along the back of your hairline. For us girls, we get terrible knots back there. So, grab whatever you're using. I love tri-slide. It's in a spray can, super easy to use. Just make sure you're hitting that spot as well as the neck and all the normal chafe spots you have wherever your wetsuit bugs you.
Okay. Now, I noticed you wear glasses, and Are you using a certain type of goggles or contacts for the swim?
So I race in contacts. I use single day disposables, so they're very easy. Throw them on in the morning, super comfortable, and I'll wear that same pair all the way through the day.
Do you have a pair of extras in your other bags just in case?
Depends on when I packed my bag. So in general, I'd like to say yes. But if I use them, I don't always get a new pair back in. So, it's probably good to put on the checklist to make sure I have them, but I'm not great about that.
Okay. So your cannon goes off for your swim.
Yep.
How does the swim go for you?
So Roth, if people don't know, is a canal swim. And really what that drives is it's a pretty narrow lane. There are 2 female waves. There are about 400 female participants for the individual full. And so you have about 200, 225 of folks kind of starting with you. There's, like I said, there's 2 female waves, 705 and 710 were this year. So you can imagine there's 200 folks in the water. It's a shipping canal, so it's very deep in the middle. It's shallow on the sides, not super wide. The swim starts a little bit bouncy. Bouncy as in there's a fair bit of contact. And it probably takes, about 400 meters to kind of find a spot to be in. The great thing is they have marked every 200 meters on the side of the canal. It's also very shallow on the side. So if you were to need to take some time and catch your breath, you can move to the side of the canal. And then the other great thing is because it's a very linear swim because you're in the canal, it's super easy to find some feet and kind of get pulled along. So that was my going in plan for the swim, is to just kind of get in a line, wait out any contact in the beginning, and then get in a line and just ride the line.
Okay. Were you able to catch a line pretty quick?
Yes. Yeah. And part of that is just due to the fact that, it's in a canal, so everything's kind of constrained a little bit. So you just find a set of feet that are moving at the right speed and you kind of just get sucked in. It's actually hard not to.
Okay. Now, did you experience any issues with your swim, or did it go pretty well?
It went pretty well. You swim up to, it's split up. So it's about, the numbers are a little bit off, but in my head, the way I factored it was a 1500 first leg out. Then you do a long second leg. It's about 2000 meters. And then you kind of make up the rest in this little, you come back around and you make up the rest in a little piece at the end. So I knew if I was swimming well, I would just have to get to that first 1500 meters. And so that's about a half an hour swim. So that's how I chunked it up in my head, because it's a really long swim, right? So I kind of chunked it up for that first section. I said, I'm going to get to the first section and then I'm going to turn around. So, that all went fairly well to plan. I did, get passed by several guys, from the men's age group. That was the 715 age group. Some of those guys were very, very strong swimmers. So there was some contact on the back leg, that long 2000 meter leg. And I did have to kind of pop up and catch my breath one time because, there were a couple of strong guys. But other than that, nothing remarkable. It was a good swim for me.
Okay. Now, you get out of the swim from the time that you get to about 50 yards out from getting out of the water to the time that you get on the bike. Walk me through that.
So one of the unique things about racing in Roth is that you have to wear your bib on the bike. And so one of the things that I always kind of think when I'm getting out of the swim is, okay, that's a little different. Make sure that you remember that. But really, I just wanted to get in and out of transition. So there's a big tent and everyone goes through the same tent. And there's fantastic volunteers that kind of grab your bag. So got out of the swim, got my bag on the run, got into the tent. Another thing that folks who race in the US probably aren't used to is it's a co-ed tent. There's not a boys tent and a girls tent. So when you get in, that's what you get, right? Walked in, my volunteer dumped my bag. I definitely wanted to wear socks. So it took a minute to dry off my feet and grab some socks. And then really just wanted to get out and ride. So, wasn't real concerned or thinking too much through that other than get on your bike and go for a bike ride.
Okay. Now, this is something unique that I think is kind of different in relationship to the U.S. is I've talked with someone from the Ironman Frankfurt that also had to wear their bib on their bike.
I think it's a European thing.
Yeah, I think it is too. Not just like a certain triathlon brand or a certain country thing. I think it's it's just a European thing.
Yeah.
Now, you get out
there are a couple ways you can do it. I was racing in a one piece this year, so I had to use a race belt for the most part. Previously, I raced in a two piece and I actually wore a bike jersey on the bike. And so I had pre-pinned the bib to my bike jersey. So all I had to do was throw on my jersey. The other thing that's unique is that there's no special needs. So if you're like me and you're, a 6 to 6.5 hour bike split, you're carrying all of your stuff for that whole time.
Wow. So you had all of your calories with you.
Correct.
So you're wanting to hit about 300 calories per hour for 6 hours. You had to carry 1,800 calories on the bike.
1,800 calories. Yep.
Or actually closer to 2,000 calories.
So I had a sleeve of shot blocks per hour. So those are 200 calories per sleeve. And then at the top of the hour, I took a goo. So that was my other 100. And I had 6 of each.
Wow. Okay.
So I had 1,800.
So you get out on the bike course. How does the first few miles go for you?
First few miles is downhill. It's fast. They're very, very aggressive with no drafting. So one of the things that you have to be very careful about and aware of is where you are in relation to the other folks around you. So you pay attention to that. It makes the first couple miles go by pretty quick. Lots and lots of motos out there. And the drop distance is 12 meters. So it's fairly significant.
12 meters. What does that compare to in America?
I think we're at, so we usually talk about 3 bike lengths. So it's definitely shorter than 12 meters.
Okay. Now, you get to the middle portion of the bike ride, say miles 50 through 80, where most of the demons come out to play. How was that for you?
Oh, I just sailed through the bike ride. It's stunningly gorgeous. There are 2 hills on it. So it's a 2-loop course. There are 2 hills. The first one is Gretting, which is a little bit of a grinder. The second one is Solerberg, which is the one that everybody knows. It's super famous because the crowd support on it is amazing. Off of the back of Gretting, that first hill, though, is a very technical descent. And so as you're getting into the second loop, kind of where you would normally be thinking of, okay, got some work to do, right? Like I'm still trying to focus on this. You're focusing on riding smart. So I think it takes a lot of the like mental demons out that you may have on a flat open course.
Okay. Now, if you compare this course to a very flat course that is mind-numbing, this course would be a little bit more active, engaging, right?
Yes, and it's gorgeous. So you're weaving in and out of towns. There's really no places that are flat and there's nothing to look at. I mentioned the 2 hills and the technical descent. And it's not super technical, but it's got some switchbacks on it. It's definitely something to be aware of.
Okay. Now,
but it is not, at no point is it mind numbing. It's stunning. It's a gorgeous course.
Okay. Now, did you and your coach have a certain way that you wanted to attack this bike ride as far as a cadence, power, or maybe a heart rate number you wanted to hit?
So I talked about having a target power in training. I have a target power in racing, but I don't rely on that. So my power meter was doing some interesting things. I had another mistake I had made in the morning was that I left it in calibration mode. And so when I got out on my bike, it took me a couple minutes to get it kind of settled. And then I didn't want to recalibrate it. It was definitely reading low. I love to ride my bike, and I knew what I was capable of, and I rode mostly by feel. So I didn't put a lot of stock in the numbers, and it turned out to be a good plan because I rode much stronger than my data shows. But again, that was on me, right? I left my computer in an odd mode in the morning. And honestly, I don't race by power or numbers. I race a lot by feel.
That makes sense. And I've talked with a lot of people, and the majority of them understand the importance of racing by feel and understanding to know your body during the race. Because if technology like your situation happens where, hey, it craps out on you, you need to be able to go, okay, cool, that's fine, and just drive right on and understand, okay, This is what I should be feeling at this point in time and going with it.
And it's the same thing. I mean, we all wear run watches too, right? And I ran a marathon where I was in the porta potty right before the marathon, and my watch just froze and turned off. And, you know, you got to be ready to kind of go out and do that. And that's really what the training is about, is learning where and how hard you can push yourself. And then so race day is really just, you know, go out and have fun. At least that's the way I approach it.
Right. Now, to ask something new that I haven't asked before, and I just really thought of this, in training, did you find the bottom of your barrel as far as the energy goes?
Oh, yes. Yes. That run that we talked about earlier where I cut it short, it may have involved laying in a field under a tree, being unable to move any further.
Really?
And it may have involved calling an Uber to take me back home. So I will neither confirm nor deny that I use an Uber to get me home from a training run. But yes, absolutely. And so part of that is, right, nutrition and taking a step back and saying, did I make a nutritional mistake? Was it just that I was, at the end of a training block or working a lot of hours or whatever, but absolutely hit the bottom of the barrel.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Now, and that terrible run didn't impact your confidence at all because you had the consistency before that.
Yeah, no, it didn't.
Yeah,
and that's exactly the reason. Is because I knew that I was at the end of the block and that I had done a 2 hour and 15-minute run the week before, and I kind of hit where I wanted to, and I was just tired.
Gotcha. Now, as far as the bike course goes, how are the aid stations on the bike?
All of the aid stations are great. They tend to put them at the end of an uphill usually so that you're moving slow enough. All of the volunteers, whether they're kids or adults, have been taught how to hold bottles so you can just ride by and grab a bottle. Very well stocked, extremely organized. They go through everything at the athlete briefing, but they had bibs, basically, like almost like race pennies from when you were a kid, that were different colors. So if you wanted water, you got them from a green shirt person. If you wanted their electrolyte solution, which they call ESO, you get it from a person in a blue shirt. So as you would come up to the aid stations, you could very clearly see, and they were the same at every aid station. Wow. What you needed, and you could just grab it. Fantastic.
The colored shirts, that's something I haven't heard of before, and that's pretty slick. I like that.
Yeah, and they're really easy to spot. So that's one of the easiest things that just makes you just can fly through those. Every aid station has a porta potty too. And so if you need to use the restroom, it's right there. Somebody will grab your bike and hold it for you while you run in. They're just great. The volunteers there are fantastic.
Great. Now, how was the quality of the roads here?
It's Germany. So, and I'll explain. They give you warnings that there's one spot that is a very rough road. So I live in the Northeast. Very rough road to me means it's impassable in your car, or you will lose, the front end of your car in a pothole. This very rough road is going over a dam, and it is manhole covers. That's it. Manhole covers. No potholes, no cracks in the road. extremely fast road surface, extremely comfortable. They really take fantastic care of their roads.
Wow. Now, did you see that many flats on the bike course?
I didn't see any flats on the bike course.
Wow. 112 miles with no flats.
Yeah, I didn't see a single person on the side of the road with a flat.
Wow. Now, as far as the bike goes, how do you know how hard to push in the earlier stages of the bike ride versus the later portions of the bike ride?
So I tend to ride pretty steady. I just kind of ride. The one thing is you've got those two hills that are going to break it up a little bit. I did hold back a little bit on the first half of the ride, so that I was able to kind of have some ability to push on the second half. But remember, I was riding without power at this point, so it was really mostly by feel.
Okay. As far as the bike goes, is there anything you'd want to tell someone to be aware of that hasn't done this bike course before?
Yeah, practice downhills. So coming off the back of Gutting is like the descent that I've been talking about. There's 3 chicanes on it. And riding it, you really can't ride your brakes down it. It's a little too steep. And people ride not poorly, but fairly aggressively in there. So be confident on the descent. You'll do that twice.
There's 3 what now?
Chicanes, so big turns.
Okay. I haven't heard that word before. The last
So,
mile.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So sorry. Go ahead.
So the last mile or two on the bike ride, are you doing anything on the bike to prepare you to start running?
I will spin up my cadence, and try and shake my legs out a little bit. But really I don't do much.
Okay. So you get to T2. How does T2 go for you?
Great. I really didn't do much. I threw on my shoes, grabbed a visor, grabbed my run nutrition, and got out of Dodge. It was a very quick, they have, when you come into T2, someone will take your bike. So you really just have to get into the tent.
Okay. And you just run by and pick up your bag? Pretty simple process?
Yep.
Okay. Now, did you have a certain strategy for the run of how you wanted to tackle this?
I did. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit because it fell apart a little bit on me. I wanted to get out strong on the first mile and really not walk at all in the first mile. So the Roth run course has changed a couple of times over the years, but a large portion of it is along the canal. It's a different part than you swim in, but it's along the canal, so it's very flat. So I wanted to get out on that first mile, just find my legs, settle in. I was targeting about a 9-minute mile. So just kind of to find my spot. And then my plan was, once I found my legs, is just to kind of click off the miles. Really fun is it's marked in kilometers. So you pay attention to your watch and you look at your split, but I found that clicking off the Ks went really fast. There's a lot more of them, but they went fast. So that was the approach that I tackled the run with.
Okay. Now, with the run course, you say the first mile is pretty fast?
The whole run is actually pretty fast. I tend to go out a little hard on the first mile. So I was trying to hold it back a little bit.
Okay.
Because it's a long day.
Were you wanting to walk the aid stations?
My original approach was not to walk at all.
Okay.
So
just run the whole thing.
Set my pace at a level that I could just continue to click off the miles.
Okay. Now, at this point, were you experiencing any cramping or GI issues at all?
Yeah, at mile 2, which changed the whole run.
Okay. Well, what happened?
I think I had trouble keeping stuff down starting around mile 2. And so one of the things that's a little bit hard in training, right? We can all train up to 6-7 hours. That kind of training for the next couple hours is tough. So I think, that it's warm, at this point. It's very sunny. Stuff still tasted fine. I didn't get to the point where I was like, this doesn't taste good. I don't want to take it in. But I was getting to the point where I don't think that I was absorbing or processing, the nutrition very well. And so, yeah, it changed the race.
Okay. How did you make a on-site correction to adjust your race?
So mile 2, I took a little bit of a walk. I was having some stomach cramps. took a little bit of a walk. Once I kind of got all of that, calmed down a little bit, I was able to take in some calories. Miles 3 through 8 were spot on. I mean, I was nailing my pace. I was feeling really good. I was in a really good mental spot. Mile 8, I went to go take some nutrition and just, I really couldn't keep it down. So, the correction was to run, walk, and try and keep everything, as stable as possible. So that's kind of how I tackled, the majority of the day was run when my stomach was feeling good. And when stuff got real crampy, to calm down and walk. And I tried to find something that was in between, that I was, not slowing down as all the time, but, it was it was a different day than I expected.
Right.
But it worked out great.
Okay. Now, so you get to mile 10 through 13. How does that go?
So folks should be prepared on the Roth course, that the majority of the run is along the canal till about mile 15, and it's pretty mind numbing. So I felt okay. I was excited to get off the canal. I'd been looking at the same stuff for a while. You can race with headphones there and music, and some folks do. I do not. Mile 13, 14, and 15, I wish I had some music with me. But, I knew that as soon as I got off the canal, I'd get to run through a town and see some folks. So I was really looking forward to that.
With the headphones, can you use the headphones on the bike?
No.
Okay. Just to make sure we're on the
Only
same page.
on the run. Yep.
Only on the run. Gotcha. Now, at mile 13 and 14, were you in a good place mentally?
Well, I wasn't going to drop out. I kept looking at my watch, and I knew it was going to be a longer day than I had set out to be. So that was kind of that was a little bit of a gut check. But it's such an honor and an opportunity to get to race and to be in this race. And so one of my tricks is always to find somebody and say hi. And so I'm that annoying person that says hi to everyone on the run. And that helped, keep my spirits in it. And again, I knew that I was going to be getting to a more interesting spot on the run soon and be in a town. So I knew if I just hung on until we got out of the canal that, I'd get all the crowd support I needed to finish strong.
Okay. Now, as far as the run goes, how hard did you want to push in the earlier stages versus the later stages before you got to the run? Did you have a way that you wanted to negative split it, or did you just want to run solid?
I just wanted to run solid steadies all the way through.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as the support on the course, you said there was a long section of 13, 14 miles of just on the canal before you turn off of it.
Yep.
How was the support there?
It was still great. There's 2 aid stations, at least 2 aid stations. There's probably more. And you do loops kind of down there. So you'll do an out and back. So you'll hit the same aid station, twice. The volunteers were great. It was probably the only part of the day though, that there weren't spectators lining the entire area. They have aid stations about every 2 kilometers. So, that's about, 1.7 miles or so. So there's lots of support down there.
Okay. Now, were there many hills on the run course?
The back 10K is a little hilly. Up to that point, it's dead flat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the conditions on the course, were there a lot of shady places or places where it was rough terrain on the road, sidewalk, trail?
So the canal is it's dirt, but it's not compacted. It's a little bit loose. It's a pretty great surface to run on. It's not quite as loose as if, you're walking at the beach or whatever. Once you get off of that, and you're running on the roads are great. You don't get shade until you get off the canal though. So that whole first part of the run is pretty exposed from a sun perspective.
Man. Now, mentally, how hard was this race for you?
It was a challenging day. It changed, as we've talked about on the run, but my goal coming into this race was to enjoy the experience, to have a fantastic time. And my A goal for this race was to finish and remember the finish line. So Roth builds a stadium and you finish in a stadium. And last time I did this race, I was so excited to finish, but I was so worried that I was going to fall and trip in the bottom that all I remember when I think back on it is like running across the carpet. I never looked up. And so I got through the finish and I looked up and I saw all of these people and it was absolutely incredible. So I accomplished everything that I wanted to. Again, the day changed a little bit, but to be able to take away and remember the finish and to just be a participant at every minute of the day was incredible.
Wow. To look back on it, on the course, what was the funniest thing that you saw on the run course?
There was a clown.
Really?
There was a clown with a big clappy hand, and he followed us around. He's a great guy.
Wow. Now, you got a little ahead of the questions a little bit of like the way I like to do things, but with the last 800 yards of the run course, I'm sure you're able to hear the stadium and hear the roars of the crowd by then. And are you entering the stadium before then? When are you entering the stadium?
You make kind of this turn, and then you just enter the stadium, and then you do this big loop in the stadium before you actually cross the finish line.
Wow. So walking down or running down the carpet, how was that?
Unbelievable. Worth every step of the day, worth getting up at 4 a.m. to register for the race. It's just incredible. Like, you just look up and there's all these people and they don't know you and they're there for their athletes, but they're also there to participate in the experience. And so, yeah, looking up and seeing everybody's face, it was awesome.
Wow. So after you cross the finish line, what'd you do next?
You go through this area into athlete finishing line area, and they have food, and you'll get a beer glass. Erdinger sponsors that, so you'll get a beer glass. You can get a certificate that you can bring home. They have all the food there. They have athlete showers, which is amazing.
Really?
So you can grab a shower, you grab your morning clothes bag, and you can walk right through and meet your family on the other side of this tent. Or you can spend time in there, whatever you want. It's nice, and they have big fans, and it's cool, and they've got, it's shaded, so you're out of the sun.
Okay. Were these co-ed showers too?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's Europe, so, it's a little different than the US. But you can just, people weren't spending a ton of time in there. Anyone who's done long distance racing before knows that first step into the shower, you find all those spots that you missed tri-slide on. So it's not like folks were hanging around in there very long. But it was really nice to rinse off, before putting on some clean clothes.
Okay. Now looking back on it, how well prepared for this race do you think you were?
It's a long day. But I was prepared, and it was, one of the things you take away is physically prepared. You start, you finish, right? But being mentally prepared and rolling with the punches and, just having a good day out there. I was absolutely ready for, what the day brought.
Okay. It sounds like with your experience to give yourself grace along the way for different things.
You have to. It's a long day. Things change. I had more change in this race early in the day, but you have to. It's to expect that, you're going to be out there, even if you're a fast guy and you're going to be out there for sub 9 hours, stuff's going to happen.
Gotcha. If you could change one thing about your race and do it again, what would you change?
That's a great question. I don't have a whole lot of regrets from this race. I would love to have an opportunity to execute the run that I know that I'm capable of. And I'm going to go back and do that. But the day is what it is, and it was a great day.
Okay. Now, what's something that you learned from your race experience that you'd like to pass on to someone who hasn't done this race before?
Couple key things. Bring toilet paper for the morning. Make sure you have stuff if you go in a porta potty, that you bring your own paper. It's not always there. And then the volunteers really get behind this race. So be thankful, be grateful. I mean, you're out there because other people are giving their times. So when there's a little kid that's offering you a sponge or a high five, take it, and give back. Wow. Because they want to be there.
That's great. For first-timers that are traveling from the States to go over there, what advice would you give them?
Follow the rules. Germany is kind of a rules-based culture, and respect that. The folks are wonderful. Bavaria is an amazing place to be and really enjoy it. And spend some time there. Don't just fly in and fly out. Really give yourself some time to enjoy the people, enjoy the culture, enjoy the food, and have a great time.
Okay. How could Challenge Roth make your race experience better there?
I don't really think that there is, anything on race day. The challenge for U.S. participants is the registration process opens at 9 a.m. German time, which is 4 a.m. for us on the East Coast. And it sells out extremely quickly. So getting the opportunity to race there is probably the challenging part, and the part that if they could make improvements, that would be one area to give more people the opportunity to race there.
So basically just changing the time that the registration opens.
That would be helpful.
Okay. Now, we covered a lot. Do you have anything else to add about your race?
I don't. The one thing I would say is, we've talked a lot about this today, and stuff changes, and the way you deal with change is to kind of be fluid. And as you mentioned, give yourself grace. That comes with racing. So any opportunity you have to race, if it's a local, 5K, or it's a trail run or a tiny local race, or you're racing with a larger company in the US, please race with Roth 3. That is an opportunity to make these bigger days more successful. So get out there as much as you can.
Okay. Now, as far as moving on now, what races are on your bucket list?
I don't know if I should say this publicly. I did have an opportunity to go out and spend some time in Vermont this weekend at Vermont's Toughest, which is an Iron Cowboy race. That was amazing. Someday I may be crazy enough to sign up for that one. But I'd like to, I really enjoy traveling and racing. So kind of on my bucket list is Norseman, at some point. But I don't know when that's going to happen.
Wow. So what was Vermont's Toughest? What distances were there? It's
a full.
Okay.
And it's a self-supported race. So you bring a crew. So it's a great time to get to know some folks better. It was an unbelievable day. A great swim. There was some chop. So it's a full. Then the bike, had 8,600 feet of climbing on it. It was a great ride. Beautiful roads. The weather was challenging. It was cold in the morning, very windy. It rained a couple of times. And then kind of the crowning achievement on this crazy day was the run. And, it included 2 ascents up Burke Mountain. So it was a great day. 6,000 feet of elevation on the run for folks who are counting.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yep.
So what's next?
And amazing. What's next for me? I'm in Placid. I will be spectating on the race course. We have a lot of friends and teammates who are racing this weekend. And then I am going to kind of shut down triathlon for the summer and focus on some long running, targeting some marathons in the fall.
Nice. What marathons?
I'll be doing VIA, which is in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And then looking for my late season, currently looking at potentially Rehoboth in Delaware.
Nice. Well, I want to just thank you for your time, and I only have one more question left for you. And
all right.
What's your definition?
Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show,
my definition
please take
of
a
a
minute to leave a
perfect
review on
race
iTunes or share it with a friend.
Looking back,
be sure to subscribe so you never miss an
being
episode. If you'd
proud
like to see
of the
pictures
way
from this
that you
athlete's
deal
race,
with whatever
learn more
the
about
day
who I
throws
am,
at you,
what I'm doing,
and
or be on the show
looking
yourself
forward
to share your story,
at the
check
next
out my
race
website,
and figuring out what you want to do.
Until next time,
Definitely remembering the finish line is a big one for me.
Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing your story about Challenge Roth. I've enjoyed hearing about it, and I look forward to following you in the future. And I just want to thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
You're very welcome.
Awesome. Well, I hope you have a good day, and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thank you.